Welcome. Welcome to Sharing the Three Principles with Jim Beck. This is your host and your friend, currently Tony. Welcome to episode 4, Sharing Relationship. Well, this episode is very special. Why? Because in this episode, we have someone special, and that is Ros Wallace, the wife of Jim Beck. And along with Ros, we have 3 special couples with us who are going to share the secrets of happy and loving relationships with us. And that's the surprise who the people are. And it will be introduced by Jim Beck. So, ladies and gentlemen, here I present to you our first couple of the show, our special, loving, caring, very happy couple, Jim and Ros. Welcome.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for your patience at the beginning of this. We really appreciate it. I love your feeling. I love your presence here. I love your smiling faces. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for your cooperation. Starting in on relationships and beautiful relationships that, we have couples today, but relationships can be not couples. They can be parents and children. They can be friends. They can be cousins, relatives, or acquaintances, workmates. All of them really, they're very similar. The way that we've chosen to present relationships is not to dig into them, not to find out what problems that come up and how to handle them. That's not where we are. What we're doing is modeling relationships, for better, for worse. And we have 4 beautiful relationships, at least represented in the room here, and starting with Rosalind and myself, and then we have 3 other beautiful couples, and all of us are grounded in the truth as shared by Sydney Banks, and we're privileged to be one-on-one with Mr. Banks, and also at quite small meetings, sometimes in homes, that were going on in the early days, and here we are joined together again. So that's very special. Have a look. These are wonderful, beautiful relationships, and that's as far as it goes in terms of the nuts and bolts of a relationship. Now we're going to just get into sharing, and this is as couples, but as I said, the principles are all the same. And then I want to turn to beautiful Rosalind, my partner of 6 years, my wife of about 6 weeks. We've had a wonderful experience together. I know you agree with me on that. When we met, it'll be tomorrow. It'll be exactly 6 years since we met, and within a week we were, you would say, constant companions. We did not live in the same house. We lived in the same houses because we both kept our own place, but we had pets, and we went back and forth, and we had maintenance to do here and there. And so we would spend about half a week out here in Salt Spring, and then we would trek back into Ros's place in Victoria. And after about 3 years, we moved in together over here, and carried on as as though we were a married couple, without the formalities. And only recently, during this past about 6 months, we started visualize getting married. It was just a lark almost, and yet as soon as the engagement was decided, we felt immediate rewards in deeper feelings of love. And lo and behold, when we actually got married, the same thing happened again. We didn't think we could get any happier, but we did. We were wrong. We've grown even closer, and life is still an incredible adventure, and we're pretty well living as we always have for those 6 years. The wedding itself was incredible for us, because of the people in the room, old friends, old wonderful couples and singles, gathering together, and as if, there had been no time lag, there had been no families grown, all of the lives that we've lived in the last virtually 40 years, more than 40 years. What was there was the here and now, and deep feelings of love, and we can have that same thing right here and now in this Zoom room as we share together. So that's my part of it. And Ros, over to you, darling.
It's been an interesting journey, and one that I was not expecting, but I have enjoyed it. 6 years ago, my niece phoned me up and asked me if I was in a relationship, because she had heard about a gentleman who would like to be in a relationship. And I weighed the pros and cons of that and decided that perhaps I could do that. And so Jim called and we set up a date to go and have tea or coffee together. And on the way there, I said to myself, nothing may come of this, but you're going to go in and have a good time. And that was fine. And I met Jim, and I was quite taken by him because he was so relaxed and easygoing and put me at ease. And for the next hour and a half, we talked about what we would like to do if we were to share together, and where that might take us. But before we got too deeply into that, Jim said there was something that was very important to him, and he wanted to share that with me. So I asked him to explain what that was. And he said that there had been a man in his life by the name of Sid Banks, and he had meant a great deal to him, and what he had been bringing to people. And Jim felt this was important, that I knew about it and that I would be able to share this with him. So I was a little uncertain at first if this was going to be something that was rather cultish, but decided to go ahead and said, all right, if you would tell me about that. And he did. And he explained quite beautifully about mind, consciousness, and thought. And I said, oh my heavens, this is something I've been searching for a very long time. And so we talked about that, and then got back to what we wanted to do with our lives if we had the choice. And we both decided that it was important that we were true to ourselves in what we were doing and how we related to each other. And that we would honor the other person and where they were coming from. So after about an hour and a half, we went and had lunch, and then set up to go and meet the following weekend and go to the market on Salt Spring. And I have a dear sister who lives on Salt Spring, and she was very keen that I should meet someone at some point in time in my life. And so I was concerned that since she often went to the market, we might meet each other there. And then she would want to know all about this man that I was with. What's going on?
It's okay. Keep talking.
So I called my niece and asked her if she knew what my sister was doing that weekend. And she said, actually, she's going to be in Victoria meeting her brother-in-law and sister-in-law who were coming for the weekend to share time so that they wouldn't be on Salt Spring for a couple of days. So I was greatly relieved because that meant that we could just go and have fun and enjoy the time together. And subsequently, my sister did meet Jim, and she thinks he's wonderful. And it's been a wonderful chance in a relationship with my sister, which had not always been the greatest, to try and get myself into the fact that we have separate realities and look through her eyes and see what she must be experiencing as well as letting her know what I was experiencing. So then the next timeline of significance was being invited to a friend's birthday party. It was the 65th birthday party, and I was going to be meeting a lot of Jim's friends. And I was terrified because I have never been much of a social butterfly, so to speak. And Jim reassured me that they were all lovely people and that I would be most welcome. So we went to the party, and I was amazed at the beautiful people and how kind and caring they were and willing to share. And it was just a real eye-opener, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Anyhow, our relationship has gone along with a lot of different activities that we decided to plunge into and try, some which Jim felt a little unsure about. But I was willing to stand there and support him while he tried. So go ahead.
Thanks so much. The profound experience that we shared at that birthday party with about 8 or 10 other couples, 8 or 10 other wise people, couples. It's similar to, in a way, what the psychologists saw when they came to Salt Spring Island. These were the same people, and they were, in a word, blown away by what they saw. This was the proof that's in the pudding. There was even one of them that would do the drop by and try to catch some of these couples off their game, as though they were all putting on a front for him, for his benefit. And in fact, he found more and more reinforcement that it was really what he thought, that these were couples that were exemplifying what he would love for his clients. Healthy people, happy people, kind people, considerate, loving, caring people, living from the heart. And I can't think of a better way to share about relationships than to be dropped into a group of people like that, as Ros was. And it's my hope that this sharing that we're doing And what we're doing here in this Zoom room is going to be reflective of that. And we have 3 beautiful couples from that era, and they are graciously here, willing to share, understanding the beauty of sharing and the rewards of sharing, as well as the benefits that they're providing others. And so in that, going along in that regard, I want to introduce Robin and Jerry Lee Allen, 2 dear friends, a beautiful couple, and invite them to share. And we were talking yesterday, and I hope you want to talk about the same things that we were talking yesterday, because I found them to be really beautiful. But you can talk about whatever you want, guys. It's your forum now. So I'm passing it on to Robin and Jerry Lee. Big applause.
Thank you, Jim.
That was beautiful.
Do you want me to go?
Sure, you can start.
Well, as you're winding down just now, I found that my heart rate was going up. Anyway, you guys have such a mature relationship, and it reminded me of how we started over 55 years ago, when we were pretty young and really just like party animals. We just wanted to have fun. We just were playful all the time. We would water ski, we'd go to parties, we would laugh. And that's how our relationship started. And we were really quite young. So by the time we had a couple girls and we go into in our 30s, things weren't quite as good. This is, I think you'd back me up on that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we're getting to Sid. We're living in Nanaimo, and we're just like flowing along. I'm working at a good job. Jerry Lee is at home looking after our girls, but our marriage is
On a bumpy road.
It's on a bumpy road.
It's on a bumpy road. Yeah.
So that was sort of the scenario when, and I will tell that story about how we met Sid, how it came about, because we weren't looking at the time. We weren't searchers, which I think it's fair to say that early on, Sid attracted people who were searching, particularly on Salt Spring. And we weren't in that category. We were just living an ordinary life in Nanaimo. But I read an article in a newspaper, which was kind of strange and fortuitous, which was about a book that had been written about Sid, the first book ever written about Sid, and it was written by Linda Quiring. And Linda Quiring is a girl that I went to high school with, and I had lost touch with her, and she was a favorite of mine. We worked together at a place in Colwood, and we enjoyed each other. But I'd lost touch with her, and here she was, Linda Quiring. It's an unusual name, and she's written a book. So further on in this article was the fact that Sid was going to come to Nanaimo to a community center and give a talk. So this is 1976.
Yeah.
And I decided, I better go because Linda might be there and I'd like to see her. So we went to listen to Sid without any idea about what this was about. And do you want to tell your side?
Well, we walked into this community center and there was a sea of hippie-looking people, and it was like, yike, what have we walked into here? And it was like, immediately I had this uneasy feeling, but we sat down and Elsie introduced Sid, and I got this incredible feeling from her, which freaked me out. And we listened to Sid, and at halftime I said to Robin, I got to go home. Like, I don't want any part of this. This is scaring me. I'm out of here. But in the meantime,
Yeah, well, so we left, but before leaving, I noticed that there was a phone number on a blackboard on the wall. And Sid had said, this is what I recall. And for some reason, it stuck with me. He said that, I mean, he was in a marketing venture. He was spreading out now, going away from Salt Spring. And he wanted to share with everybody. So Nanaimo was one of them. And he said, we don't care who you are, what your past is, what you do. We don't care. That doesn't matter. It's got nothing to do with it. We just want to share this information. I didn't know what the information was, but somehow that I really appreciated that openness, and there was no class involvement. There was no restriction. You could just be yourself, and you didn't have to make any adjustment. It was you that he wanted to talk to. So I phoned this number, and the person who owned the number became a good friend of ours in the end. And there was another meeting going to happen at a house, just in a small gathering. I think I went. Jerry Lee did not, but I went, and I think there was maybe 8 or 10 people there, just sitting in the living room, mostly on the floor. And Sid was talking, and Barb was there, his first wife, with him. And I don't recall anything that they said, nothing specific. No doubt he was saying what he always said, but nothing stuck with me. And I left. Well, as it turned out, I went away from home for a couple of weeks on a training seminar or a training for my work. And I had never felt so happy in my life. I just felt like a glow, and I didn't know why, but it was just so new. So I felt so good that when I came home,
I thought for sure he had been taking drugs the whole time. Said, who is this guy? You're happy every day. What is going on? He said, I don't know. It's maybe something from that meeting with that guy. And I said, well, I'm going to the next meeting. And I went, and it was like, well, what is he talking about? I don't get it. But the people were so wonderful, and the feeling was just welcoming. I thought, well,
that's harmless.
That's harmless. Let's keep going to these things, right? And it just developed. I can't remember having a realization or anything like that, the light went on, but it was just over time, I just saw that our life was getting a little bit smoother. I wasn't as impatient with the kids as I was. Life looked pretty good, from those early days.
And our relationship started to become a different thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't tied up in, well, what it used to be, and whatever stresses or pressure was on us before just got relieved somehow, and we could see each other a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so bringing it back to relationships, that saved us, in fact.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful life right from then. There's been bumps, of course, there always are, but that it's temporary, that it's only in that moment, and the next moment is going to bring something else, right? So that, to me, that's the greatest gift, to know that these thoughts that we create are temporary, and that there's always a good feeling coming up, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we haven't ever shared like this before, because we're just regular people. We just do our thing. But I'm involved in a few things on the island, and people are always saying, oh, can you come over and help with this? It would be really nice to hang out with you or have coffee, and you just share a good feeling. And that's what it's about, isn't it? Sharing that feeling. And we were lucky to be around in the early days and to get to have that contact.
We were very lucky. Yes, yeah.
Grateful.
The early days were so intense in a way. The feelings that you'd have would always be magnified. If you walked in and to a room where Sid was, his presence sometimes could be sort of overwhelming to me. I'm just talking about myself, but I can remember feeling really afraid just to walk into a room when he's close by, because he was Sid. And I can remember other times sitting next to him on Salt Spring at their house, and I just happened to sit down this one time, and I sat next to him, and it's hard to describe, but there was a vibration that came from him that went through me that was so beautiful and calming, and I felt like when I got up, I was a different person, and all I'd done was sit down next to him. It was really a powerful time, and if our consciousness rose, it was dramatic. Again, I'm just talking about myself, but to move up a level of consciousness and see the world as a different place. It was a different reality, but also Mother Nature was new, and you'd see so much more beauty in the world. So maybe I came from a really low level or something. I don't know how that worked, but it was really, it generated a new world many times, and that was just remarkable. And that would always enhance our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a beautiful journey, and
Continues.
It continues to this day. Like, we feel like we're blessed for sure.
Yeah. We're so
I'm going to come in now, you guys. Thank you so much for the beautiful share that you just gave us.
Oh, you're welcome.
Wonderful to hear from you.
Okay.
Really
Thank
nice.
Thank you,
Thank
Jim,
you,
for
Jim.
inviting us.
Appreciate you inviting us, Jim. It's always an honor to talk about the three principles, and we know that. So thank you.
Well, thanks for stepping up. Very, very nice. And now I want to turn attention to Chirs and Larry Calero, another wonderful couple who were around in those days, and were part of things. Victoria, I believe, guys, that was your beginning. Perhaps you could share a little bit about that, or whatever you thought you were going to share. You're not held to that question. But.
I'd like to tell the little Victoria story. Larry can, in a minute, tell about our first encounter. But when Robin was talking about the small meeting in the house, I remember a meeting that we had. We lived in a little flat, and upstairs in Victoria, it was an old house. And I can't remember how many people we had in our living room. Sid was talking, but we were jammed in there. And I remember thinking, I hope the floor doesn't collapse. It was one of those, kind of magical times when it was people who were just attracted. But I'll let Larry start at the beginning. That was just a moment that I remember thinking, oh, this is so awesome. And I hope the floor doesn't give way. Go ahead.
When Jim invited us to talk, I went through different scenarios in my mind, and I was thinking, how am I going to explain this? How am I going to explain the relationship? And then it didn't take long for me to realize that there was no possible way to explain how we relate together. So I'll do what Robin and Jerry Lee did, which I thought was a great precedent, and that is simply telling the story, our story. Chris and I met, and it was like love at first sight at age 16. And we went together for, I don't know, a few years, and the relationship fell apart, and we split up, and I moved away, a long way away, and I won't go into the further details, but we did. I got very, very sick, and so she came to visit me in hospital, and that brought us together again, and we decided we were going to move in together, and we moved to Victoria in this little flat at the top of an old house. Our relationship was going in the direction that we were going to split up yet again, and it was imminent, really. I thought, but before that happened, one day I was shopping in Victoria, in a store, had a little poster in the window. It was a picture of Sydney Banks. And it talked about it, it was about a talk that he was going to be giving. And I decided we should go to that. So we did, and we went over to Salt Spring, to Beaver Point Hall. It was one of his early talks. And I had been reading a lot of New Age stuff, Ram Dass and things like that. And after the talk was over, I thought, I've heard all that stuff before, nothing new here. And Chris fell asleep during the talk, and yet afterwards there was a dance and music, and we were struck by the feeling of all the people around us and how wonderful and happy it was. Just a joyous occasion that we hadn't, I don't think, experienced before.
No.
And so we went back home, and we, started to argue again and go through the same, feeling critical of each other. And a couple of weeks later, it started to change, and the two of us. So I went back to that store, and strangely enough, the poster was still up, and it had a phone number on the bottom, which I called, and it was Dave and Carol, yeah. And they invited us over to Main Island, and I went for another talk, and eventually they gave us some tapes, and I would listen to, audio tapes of Sid's talks, and I would listen to those audio tapes in the evening before bed out in the living room. But Chris would go to bed early. She wasn't particularly interested. And as she was falling asleep, she would hear Sid's voice in the background. It must have been pretty muffled.
So I could hear what he was saying.
Oh, you could? Okay. Yeah. So anyway, she picked something up, and I still wasn't seeing much. So that's it. You never know how it's actually going to work. And this was a big mystery to us, but we started to feel different, and we started to fall in love all over again. Essentially is what happened. And so that brought us together and held us together. And we, even though we've gone through long periods of time without ever listening to one of Sid's talks or whatever, there's just a feeling that is with us, and there's a change that occurred that has kept us together for
40.
How many years?
46.
46 years. Not quite Robin and Jerry Lee's, but and of course we had 2 kids, and now we've got grandkids, and it's that's our story. What would you add to that?
Well, I would like to add, I guess I'm just emphasizing that initially what Sid was saying was a mystery, but I was so taken by the people. I remember Jim and Pam and Chip and Jan, and people were so welcoming they, Hafiz and Ranji, I just remember I had never experienced anything like that before. So we were seeing the effects, and they were powerful. And listening over time, and I do recall sitting there and thinking, I could never remember what Sid was saying. Afterwards, I try and think, what did he say? But over time, there were a few things that did stick. And one of them, I have got a couple that to this day, I remember early on, he said, everyone is with the perfect partner. And I remember hearing that, and I remember thinking, okay. And that was very sustaining in those times when things might not have been as easy, or we were in a harder spot, but just having faith and trusting that we were with the perfect partner. And another fact that we learned from Sid early on was about separate realities. And that was hugely, hugely helpful. Continued in every relationship, in every part of my life, is understanding that we are all seeing this world from our own separate reality. And that doesn't mean that those realities don't overlap and intersect, but it just allows that patience and understanding that, so it makes it much, much easier to love people. You see that. You just see that they're seeing their world. I'm seeing my world. Might be different. Doesn't matter. We're in here. We're in this together. We're in this to be in love with each other. And I'm not just talking about my partner, but I'm talking about my children and my colleagues and all the people that I worked with and the clients we had over the many years, just to see past, see into the real person. It has added such richness to my life. I am ever so grateful that we were quite young when we met Sid. I think we were 21. And boy, I can't imagine what my life would have been like had we not gone to Beaver Point. We are where we are, I believe, because of that learning that we started. And it truly, I remember in the beginning thinking, because Sid would say, this is infinite. This is going to go on forever. And you think, whoa. And it's the truth. It is, Robin and Jerry Lee, you guys said it continues. It totally does. It is endless, and we are grateful for that. That's one of the beauties.
I would just like to add, I'm thinking of all the people that might be on this call and how you might be interpreting what you're hearing. And every day isn't absolutely wonderful in the relationship. And but when we really get on each other's nerves, and I can't understand why she would think that, and she can't understand why I would say that, and all those kinds of things. It's within the context of the overall understanding that you know that you're really not getting along in the moment, but somehow you're going to bounce back. That the feeling of love and the romance is going to come again. And it does. And so it's a matter of being patient, I think, and also stepping back from your own thoughts and wondering if maybe it was a misunderstanding, and sort of giving the relationship its due credit, in spite of all the human fallacies of two people living together. So that's my explanation. I guess that's as far as I'll go with that one. But yeah. Thanks for this opportunity, Jim, and for inviting us.
Oh, you're more than welcome. And it's been wonderful listening to the two of you share. I really appreciate it. It's exactly what I had hoped would be coming. And the Robin and Jerry Lee and the Caleros here have just shared and shared, and thanks for all of that sharing. We all want to hear from you. And now we're moving on to one of my best old pals, and two of my best old pals. Clarify that, Marty and Cheryl Lipsky, who were, I found out they actually heard from Sid, not as a couple, as two strangers that went to Sid's first public talk in Vancouver. And I that would have been 75, Marty. So over to Marty and Cheryl. And thanks so much, you guys, for coming and being here and sharing your story.
Did you want to start?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, speaking about relationships, I want to talk about the great feeling I have for you two, Ros and Jim. It's a beautiful feeling. It's been a beautiful to experience your love for each other and to get to know both of you. Jim since 1975 and Ros the past 6 years. It's been a real blessing to meet Ros. And to say back when I originally went to this first meeting in Vancouver, Jim was there with his first wife, who subsequently died, I guess, 9 years ago, 10 years ago, some time ago. And I'm not right on the date, but I wanted to mention Pam because Pam was a beautiful life force in bringing a beautiful feeling to everything. And she and Jim were at the first meeting in which I went to when I heard Sid speaking. And the feeling that I got from the people who were like the first core group of people that were on the island, it was so beautiful that subsequently I decided to move to the island. And I just loved the feeling of everyone. And it was so beautiful to get to know Larry and Chris. Afterwards, when they had a meeting in Victoria, I remember going over there and sleeping on their floor. It was so beautiful experience. And then the feeling that Robin and Jerry Lee have is so beautiful. They're fun and they have such deep feelings of gratitude and gratefulness. It's just beautiful to experience them when they're in that state. So I'm so grateful for all the friends that we've met throughout the years. And then we met each other we didn't meet each other at the first meeting. We met when we were going over to Salt Spring to listen to a meeting that Sid was having on Salt Spring. Now, the thing about, I was really interested in love, but I really found, I made it into a problem, like that, it was difficult and what is it? I don't know what it is, all this kind of thing. And so it's interesting how in the personal, one can really put up barriers to love. But part of what Sid really shared in the initial time, he really talked about the spiritual. And so this going beyond the psychological is so healing for everyone. Because in our limited selves, we might think we don't know, or, I screwed up here, or now it's really bad, or whatever. But when we realize the spiritual, we realize there's always a chance to begin anew. And so in our lives, there's been many beginnings anew. And just listening to Sid at really difficult times really helped me in a sense, because it kind of gave me like I could push the restart button and kind of begin again. Now, the other thing about, I'll go back to the friends on the island, was a lot of fun. So it wasn't like, it really was serious in the sense like you'd listen to Sid and that part, you would go into a deeper space where one would feel more in the impersonal. And that feeling would be so beautiful. And all of a sudden one would kind of let go of their personal problems or whatever that they had going. And this would allow people, when we go in that state, to reconnect if things aren't going so well. And one gets the sense of just, that we're not disconnected. The sense of the three principles to me is we belong. We're part of it all. We're part of the divine mind, divine consciousness, and divine thought, because that's how we experience life. So we are not a little being that's stuck off somewhere it's really stuck. We're in the flow. We really are in it, in the midst of it all. That's who we are. Okay?
Great. Nice listening to you. Well, I don't really know what to talk about. I just find it extremely powerful listening to Robin and Jerry Lee and Chris, Larry, because it brings back memories, and they're really incredibly positive memories. It's like it's a feeling of becoming a new person, and then when I became sort of a new person and dropped a whole lot of my problems, then these other people appeared with me, and they appeared with a tremendous excitement, a tremendous love, and a tremendous willingness to grow. And I kind of approached Sid in a little bit of a different kind of way. I had studied with an enlightened person, and when I was ready to change, Sydney Banks showed up. And then I went to a meeting and asked Sid about insecurity, doubt, and fear, which was my forte. And he said there was thoughts carried through time. And it was like someone had thrown me a key to wisdom. And I took that key and it just unlocked something. And that's fundamentally where my life changed. And then we moved to the island. I moved to the island and ended up about the same time moving with Cheryl. And eventually we got together and we got married on the island, which was a fabulous experience. Mm-hmm. And then, all the friends were there, Sid and Barb and everybody, and Jim, Pam, everybody. And that was an absolutely great experience and not to be forgotten. And then being part of the first 3 years on the island, I would say, was totally a miracle. I don't think you could call it anything else but that. So many changes so quickly, so fast. And I think what was talked here by Chris and Robin and so on is this increased happiness. And I'm absolutely sure that, as Cheryl's mentioned, I had never seen happiness like this before. It was like, it wasn't happening, in Vancouver or around the world. All of a sudden, we were immersed in this love and happiness, which was wonderful. I want to talk a teeny bit about Jim Beck. Jim Beck was at that first meeting when I met him. I didn't actually meet him, but I was sitting beside Jim and Pam and other couple, Jim and Judy Wallace. And after Sid had said to me this thing about insecurity, I looked at Jim and Pam and Judy and Jim, and I could not believe what I was seeing. These were happy couples, as has been mentioned, but also there was a certain respect between the two of them that I had never seen before. So this, at that point in my life, I wanted what they had. I wanted to be like that too. So that was a big thing.
Can I say something here? I really want to speak up about the relationship that Sid had with Judy. So Judy or Barb, sorry, Barb yeah, Banks. With Barb, sorry, his second wife was Judy, but his first wife was Barb.
Yeah,
and she really embodied that sense in a couple with Sid of deep respect. So part of what really struck me in terms of observing, you were talking about modeling couples, Jim, was that I really felt like I really enjoyed the way that Barb would listen to Sid when he was talking, or the way that they would relate. There was a beautiful feeling. It really struck me, their feeling of their relationship. And
I'd say harmony was the thing, pure harmony.
Yeah, they were really aligned, and so it really affected me as a model of how to be.
Yeah. I just want to finish something about Jim too, is that throughout my time with him, there always seemed to come a time when, I needed someone to talk to me a little bit. And, one of those kinds of things where the truth was pointed out to me, sort of the areas I wasn't seeing. And Jim was always there for that. He was like a big brother that, got me sort of maybe adjusted a little bit. So I'm grateful for that. Super, super, super grateful for them as a couple, Jim and Pam, and for the other folks in the island. This has reminded me how good. I mean, at our wedding, Sid gave a speech at our wedding, and one of the things he said was the reason that we had grown so much was the love of our friends around us.
And family.
Pardon me?
And family.
And family. Said it was really important. And we had grown a lot. And this friendship was so beautiful.
And we're still growing. I mean, this is one of the things I think if we kind of open, at every minute to grow. And I think that's part of the thing that is exciting about being in a couple, because you can start to experience new things at any time. So we've been married since 1978, a long time. And new things are still happening and occurring. And one of the things that Sid used to talk about was hearing. And I was intrigued with that. But at some points, surprisingly enough, I listened to my husband and sort of heard things on a deeper level, which was such a delight to do that, to hear your own husband and all of a sudden hear them in a deeper level. And the other thing that's kind of been fun together is starting to talk about separate realities. We're quite different. We were quite different. And some of the things that I never did over the years, that he's interested in now, some of them I start just naturally just sitting down and being part of and enjoying. So it's kind of like fun. It's really fun. I think this main thing about the three principles and love and whatever is it's fun. It's not all so serious. There's a lot of fun and a lot of newness that one can have in life, and that's great.
And just to finish for me, one of the things, there's so many things that I was helped with, and especially from Sid, things like level of consciousness. But one of the things he talked about, there's no end to learning. Mm-hmm. And so we're getting older now. I'm 77 and
tomorrow. He's 77 tomorrow.
And we're getting older, but still we have the feeling there's no end to this.
And even after passing on out of this world, there's a sense of
we'll see what happens.
Energy, whatever it is, open to whatever it is. We don't know what it is, but we're open.
Anyways, lots of love.
And thank you for the opportunity.
Very much.
And I see everybody as, I think one of the things that I'm seeing is really appreciating the soul of everyone, whatever you want to call that, the energy or the soul of everyone in the room. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate your sharing. Very nice. And I'm going to turn it to Curran. And you're going to ask your questions, Curran.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. I want to thank all the couples. I loved your presence and your sharing. And now it's time for a Q&A session. Does anybody have any question to ask our couples?
Or comments?
Or comments?
I was hesitating to ask this. So you all had a first-hand experience of Sid. It just, what came to me is that for the rest of us that learn it secondhand, that it can be harder. And just that curiosity, a little question came to me, I don't know, can you get it the same because you had that felt experience? But then part of me thinks that I'm making that up. Did that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense, Wendy. And I've often wondered that because I never knew Sid. What I've learned about Sid, I got from Jim and from friends and audio tapes and books. And the different lectures that I've listened to. But the being and the feeling that comes across when you get involved in these, it's the closest I can bring it to what they might have been experiencing. And it fills you up and helps to guide you in where you're going and how you're going to approach things. At least it has for me.
Yeah, there's something really valuable about the audio tapes and the videotapes, particularly, also the books. But I remember Sid when he was first making tapes, he would tape a meeting in one place and then pass it around. And it was, it was a new thing for him. And he was in wonder at, at the fact that the tapes were changing people. Even when he was there, to be there and deliver the message in person, there is something on those tapes. There really is something on those tapes. You can feel it. There's a feeling that comes from them. Curran, when I first met him, I asked him about, how did you, meet Sid or find out about Sid and the three principles? And he told me that he was playing the tapes at night while he slept. And when he woke up in the morning, he was in another place. He was happier. The tapes, even though he was not listening carefully, he was still picking up the energy. And he talks. He shared a while ago on one of the other in this series webinars about his mother, who is OCD, and how he almost experimentally or accidentally put on Sid's tapes. She does not speak English. And yet Curran, I know this is your story, but she calmed down. She stopped washing the dishes over and over again. Her OCD behavior had abated simply from listening to Sid's tape in English, and she did not speak English. Curran, you can relate to that or tell more about that if you feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only my mom, my father, he also felt some inner peace inside, although they don't understand English at all. But something magical happened. Every time my mother was having compulsive behaviors like washing dishes again and again, filling the water and spilling the water on the floor, and my father had to give her medicines like sleeping pills so she could just stop doing that. But I just played Sid Stave. Within 5 minutes the magic started happening. She quieted down.
That is not to say that there wasn't something powerful with Sid one-on-one or in a group or when you had it. I mean, I feel like for me, I got this before I was ready to get it.
Oh my God.
Because there was nobody else around for him to give it to. I mean, he called for this initial group and there was like 8 people showed up. Well, one of them was his brother-in-law and sister-in-law and there was, that meant there was like 6 new people there. And it was just that, somehow I'd picked something up, but I certainly wasn't searching. And when it started coming at me, I had a lot of resistance. And I honestly feel if I'd come later, a year or 2 later, I wouldn't have, it wouldn't have been worth it. As far as Sid was concerned, he had people, by then he had people to talk to. But, fortunately for me, I feel like I was grabbed by my bootstraps and pulled into another level of consciousness and almost like try to get away, man. It's too late and you're getting it. That was a big blessing for me. And, yeah, the raw material he had to work with in the beginning was quite resistant. You folks, Robin and Jerry Lee, talking about how you didn't get it and that, but when it was only that welder, he was like still half welder when we met him. And by that I mean he'd only left the mill a month or so before, and still wearing welder clothes a bit, and in the old truck, and not the sophisticated gentleman that he evolved into, for sure. And I see there's another question now. Heidi, sorry, Karen, back to you now. Did you want to talk, Heidi?
Yeah, hi Jim, hi Ros. I'm not on my camera, but yeah, so you can hear me speak. So yeah, I honestly am not quite sure what question I'm going to ask, but I did speak to I saw Marty on Heartfelt Presence the other day, and he said something to me about what I was talking about, and it's that and he said something like, "Oh, I think we're going round in circles." And it's about how my question is, if I am changing, which I am, and I'm giving, this isn't about a relationship with like a relationship like you two have. Congratulations on your marriage, by the way. It's not like the same relationship that you have, but it's a relationship with a person who is in my life. And I don't know, I feel like I'm really being, like very open, honest, and full of love. And I'm not getting it back. And okay, I know that it's not about controlling, being nice to get that back. But I don't know, I just need what do I need? I just need some I don't really know what my question is, but I'm just really struggling with the what I'm struggling with is being able to settle, calm, and let the wisdom come. How are we supposed to do that when we're busy? Like busy with doing stuff. Like, if I'm like, when we're in COVID and we had loads of time and we weren't so busy, well, I wasn't so busy and I wasn't socializing. I wasn't really doing much apart from working and looking after my son. I just had all this time to sit back and relax. Whereas now I'm much more busy. I feel that, life's just running away with me, and I'm thinking, oh, so what does that mean? What am I supposed to do? Have I got to spend loads of time by myself again and not be busy doing stuff? This might sound really daft, but I'm probably overanalyzing things. But I don't know if you can say anything to that, if that's not too random for you.
Well, I would have a couple of comments. One is to understand that the love that that you create is created by you. That's your feeling of love, and to keep in mind that it's unconditional love. Enjoy the feeling, the sharing of love in the moment for the preciousness that it is, without prescribing, the response that you're hoping for. Just give it, and be kind. There's that. Another comment might be, I know you've heard this many times. Just give yourself the time to take a walk, or to have time on your own quiet. Love yourself, and give yourself that love by giving yourself the opportunity you need for your own healing, and take it for yourself, and be aware and be open. There may be other wonderful people that will enter your world that you can share with. and kind of be open to that happening. You may miss it if you're too busy. That's how do you do it? Well, you just do it. You just do it. You just take it for yourself, Heidi. You deserve it. You're a good person. You're a hardworking person. You've been through things. You're coming out the other side. You've still got opportunities to share, and you can share in your work and you can share in your family as those opportunities are presented. And just live an ordinary life. I just know that you're a great person. Give yourself that understanding that you deserve.
Thank you.
Jim, I've got a question that is from Vijalata. She says, please ask Mr. Jim, my husband is not loving me and he's not caring about me. What should I do?
Oh my goodness. Well, you need to be true to yourself. See clearly. Be the loving person that you want to be. But, try to understand where the other person is coming from. If the other person is, has hurt you in the past, go for the understanding, but don't provide the opportunity for that hurting to carry on. Go for the forgiveness, but forgiveness does not mean that it's you've opened the door to have more of the same. And I don't know exactly, what the level is in terms of not loving you. Every situation is unique in that regard. I know I have experienced it with somebody that I was really close to that it was experiencing a similar situation, and the solution in that case was to end the relationship. And in that case, it actually worked out, has worked out positively. But as I say, I don't really know enough, and it would be interesting to know about the other, your husband. Without that, it's hard to really give an answer, except be kind to yourself. Be a kind person. That's one of the best ways to be, critical thing about being kind to yourself is being a kind person. Don't get into unneeded responsive behavior. Don't get into the games. Don't enter into the games. Don't let your buttons be pushed so that you become upset or frightened or negative. Be positive. Love yourself. Be determined. Be true to yourself. And be kind. And certainly don't expose yourself to any mistreatment. Get help if that's where the situation is. But that's the best I can do on that, to be honest. I'm really not a marriage counselor. But that case that I explained, I was sharing, I was acting in that sense as a friend. If anybody else has anything that they see clearly to share regarding that question, please weigh in.
I would like to ask Robin to add something about that.
Robin just went to get a little glass of water, but he'll be back shortly. And he said he does have something to add to that.
Oh, good.
But what you've been saying to these folks, Jim, is right on. I love it. And I wish that would just be common knowledge when people are having problems in a relationship, because it's so simple, to just see, separate realities and see the understanding of where they're coming from. Because usually it's just a bad mood. And sometimes the bad mood goes for weeks and weeks, right? And you got to get out of that bad mood. And sometimes it takes maybe a bit of a jolt, or maybe just a change of scenery. But often I think it's just, a temporary thing, if people knew that.
Sorry, did I miss something?
No, Jim's just asked for your opinion on that, or Karen.
Oh, about the last question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I said it was a good answer, Jim. I mean, really, it's only going to improve when you improve. It's always up to us to go deeper, when faced with problems, or even not, because growth is the only answer to all the problems.
Raising your level.
So somehow going inside, I know that term has puzzled everybody forever, but it's finding the spot inside where you know that you're more than what your problems are, where you see yourself as a spiritual being. I mean, really, that's what we are. We're spiritual beings. So we can rise above that kind of problem and draw people up with us. So I think that there's no other answer.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, I would like to ask Marty and Cheryl, and the question is, how can two people who don't have things in common have a happy relationship?
That's a good question.
Well, we did feel that what we did have was that we had listened to Sid, and we resonated with what was being said. So even though we came from different religions, different backgrounds, different ways of being, that helped. But the other thing that I was thinking of that I feel is important is if we look at each other and we see, for example, or anyone, that someone isn't in a good mood, as Judy was talking about earlier, and Robin. So sometimes we might take that personally and be in our heads sort of ascribing certain things that go on with that. And it doesn't, and that's the part about separate realities, of realizing what I've learned just lately is to sort of see, if I see my partner and they're not in a good space, to sort of go beyond that, to realize, like, yes, maybe they are in a bad mood, and they're entitled to not always be perfect all the time. And so that's helpful. And then to sort of try to remember and the good space that they can be in, even though they're in a bad space. And that's something to learn, because quite often we stick in it. Oh, that's the way they're presenting. That's the way they are. We think that's the way they are. We don't remember all the beautiful things and the beautiful spaces they've been in at that particular time.
I think also is not to forget the principle consciousness. Consciousness is really the important factor. And consciousness connects with level. So in terms of couples getting along together, it's way, way, way more important than personality. It's the level that is important. So you want to be learning from each other and growing that level. And that takes a certain love and certain openness and a lack of competition is really important.
And
you can't be competing for the energy. You want to be sharing the energy. So level of conscious state is, instead of personalities and likes and dislikes, opinions and all that kind of thing, That's one world, but the other one is the levels. If the levels are going up and there's a certain kind of openness, you cannot lose. That's like the answer to, like, when the love is turned on, the divorce is finished. It just can't happen. It's the love that needs to keep going. And one other thing I want to mention too is, like, I absolutely love some of the statements that Sid said over my lifetime, especially when he was alive. But things like, if you're in the middle of the Sahara Desert and you're ready to change, nothing can stop it. Absolutely nothing can stop that. And then when I think of that statement, I think, well, it has nothing to do with intellect, culture, size, color. It has nothing to do with anything like that. It means, as Robin was saying, you're a spiritual being, and you're ready to change, it's going to happen. So there's always hope, because that factor is always there, your free will to change. So I think, once again, the consciousness and relationship, the levels and seeing different levels, like Ros's different levels. I hear, when you say different realities, I hear different levels. And then seeing that and
the quietened mind. So one thing that's really helpful is, like, being aware of how we're going through the world, and being in a quiet and our mind just not so busy. Mm-hmm. So there, even though lots can be going on in the world, one can be in a quieter state with it, and just not bring in a lot of the frustrated and the angry thoughts. Mm. Because we do create those thoughts of frustration or impatience or whatever it is. And we also, if we look for if we come from the divine ourselves, we understand that it's really inside of all of us. That's who we are. It really is helpful in that sense to be more loving and to be kind of fresher, to be fresh in the relationship. So when we're in the now, so part of this in relationships, the more we're in the now and not carrying thoughts through time, the more the other person will sort of look at you. You sort of look at the other person, you see their innocence. You see that they're doing the best they know how at the time, because one comes from a loving space. So that brings forth, you feel for the other person then, or what they're going through. Maybe they're having difficulties that you don't know about, or whatever is going on with them. Or even they're just lost for a little bit at a time.
Flexible.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you, Marty. Thank you, Cheryl. All right, so we've got Mick. Mick, please ask.
Thank you, Karen. I know you said we haven't got much time. It wasn't a question, it was just a comment, really. A couple of comments, if that's all right. One is just that this has just been so powerful. So thank you so much, Jim and Ros, for inviting the other couples as well. It's been, when Wendy said, we didn't, those who didn't meet Sid, how can we get it? I really feel that this evening, hearing from everyone who was there and their stories and the feeling that everyone has shared, each couple has shared has been so powerful, really, really powerful. I want to thank you. And the other thing that I want to say is when Chris, I was really moved when Chris said, regardless of who's in front of us, we're in this together, and that has just come across so beautifully from all of you. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Mick.
All right. Thank you very much, Mick. Anybody else with any question? Okay, Debbie Harvinson.
I just want to second everything Mick just said, and then some. Thank you all for what you've done. This is just incredible and awesome, and I'm so happy we're having these recorded. so they can be carried forward. So thank you.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you very much, Debbie. All right, anybody else with any question? Okay, Hafiz?
Great. So, yeah, I don't know exactly what I'm going to be saying, but anyway, so yeah, my wife couldn't be here. She's gardening, but she'll be here next week. Yeah. So, you know, my life certainly changed when I met my wife. You know, and that was part and parcel of having met Sid, and somehow the stories are intertwined. But anyway, she ended up being my wife, you know. And it is, you know, I come from a pretty conservative, reserved kind of don't speak anything that will rattle anybody, polite and all that kind of stuff. You know, very Muslim kind of background, you know. And then at first I didn't see this, right? But I see it more now. But she's the exact opposite of what I thought was going to be my partner, you know. But she's from the Punjabi background, so she's feisty. She's, you know, she say her mind, and it's taken me a long time to kind of get used to that idea. But the more I get used to the idea, I can appreciate her spunk and her honesty, and just an amazing kind of person, you know, who goes more with the feeling rather than, you know, her mind. So anyway, she's not here to cover the other half. But anyway, so I'll get back. Oh, she is.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I've been gardening, planting a butterfly and bee garden, so I look like a mess. Hafiz thinks very highly of you. I don't know your name. I'm Ranjit Kaur. My husband and I are totally opposite. We are totally opposite. I'm very Canadianized. Oh, just a minute.
Oh yeah.
Nice to see you, Jim and Ros.
You too, Rosie.
I look like a mess.
No, you don't. You're beautiful.
But I am. Anyway, I just want to say I'm. Will we see you next week?
Yeah.
Yes.
The person in India.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Karan, Sat Sri Akal.
Sat Sri Akal. I'm not your typical Punjabi girl. Too outspoken.
Okay.
Speak my mind. Very Canadianized. Hafiz, traditional Muslim boy. Total opposites together, and yeah, we actually make a good team together. We do.
Wonderful.
So opposite, coming from different parts of the world, even though we may have brown skin. So I got to give Hafiz a lot of credit for putting up with me.
Wow.
No problem. Anyway, we will see you next week.
See you next week. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Chris and Larry can go first.
Can be very brief to give Frederick some time. I just wanted to say that some people have expressed how valuable it was, and we were very fortunate to be one of the early group who met Sid in person and so on. But I want to tell you that there are times when I walked away from listening to Sid in person and got absolutely nothing. And there have been many times since his death that I have listened to others conveying their message about relationships or work or whatever it might be through the course of the three principles global community. And I have felt more touched and have grown that much more than some experiences I had directly with Sid. So it does not have to be that you knew and met this person in person. His message lives on and is now as powerful as ever, perhaps more because so many people have taken it into different realms. And I just encourage you to not think of it as a watered down message. This is, it can come to you in various forms without having ever known the man.
And I just want to add that there have been a number of times when I've been listening from an audio tape or watching a videotape, and whether I close my eyes or not, I can feel that I felt when Sid was in front of me. So it is,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's the message. It's not the man, it's the message.
Right. Thank you very much for all of you for coming. It's been a delight.
Thank you.
Yeah, very nice, guys.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Larry. All right, Frederick.
Yes, I will also keep me brief. Two things I want to say, and what Chris and they say, that I'm born in another era than the most of you guys, and you're talking about the good, about the beautiful days and how the happy people were and are, and that's what I can see here, how happy the couples are, and I'm really, that's really hopeful for me to see, and it's also great what you said. You don't have to be in contact to Sid, because Sid is not here anymore, but still his message is heard through these beautiful people, and I and all the people in the room and people around us can grow from that. And that's also very hopeful, that Sid's message still surround and is more powerful than ever. And that's the second thing. So I'm really thankful for that and grateful for being a part of this webinar. It's great of you guys, all you couples and participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick. All right, so it's been a great party. All right, so now I would like to play Drema's tape, Chapter 7.
Applications to staff and coworkers. Not long after knowing I wanted to work with staff, I read a great job description in the newspaper for the position of Staff and Patient Education Coordinator. The hospital was located just across the street. I wasn't sure what would occur, but I described my idea of helping staff. Education was the key. By helping them understand how to keep in touch with their own mental health more of the time. This understanding would help them keep their balance even in the midst of adverse circumstances. The head nurse was very young. She emanated positivity and love for her staff and others. She smiled as I talked and said this was wonderful. She said, "I have some of the best nurses I know, but I feel helpless when I see them in a low mood or working against each other rather than together as a unit." She went on to explain there was always friction between the RNs and the nursing assistants. The latter felt they did most of the work or that they got dumped on. To add to the situation, she had a variety of races and cultures, each with a very different set of beliefs and backgrounds. She summarized by saying, "I know that the moods and interactions of the staff directly impact the quality of care that the patients receive, and this is my major concern. I felt very humbled and honored to have the opportunity to work with such a wise and caring woman. I told her honestly that I didn't have a clue how to accomplish this task, but knew we had the understanding to make it possible. We decided I needed to bond with the staff so that they could get to know and trust me. Morning reports seemed like a wonderful place to start. In addition to hearing about the patients, I was able to scan the mood of the staff. The person who appeared to be having the hardest time was the one I offered to help. The first day it happened to be a nursing assistant. Even though she was grateful for the help,
She was a little uncomfortable with my offer. I'm sure she was wondering what was going on. By lunchtime, we were having such a good time with our patients and with each other, she dropped her thoughts of insecurity. Each day, the staff became more comfortable with my presence and help. They saw how you could gently interrupt a patient stuck in negative thoughts or help shift their level of understanding while doing your routine patient care. Sometimes you did this by talking, sometimes just by listening, and always, always with a feeling of unconditional love. One day I was assisting a nurse who was having a particularly hard time. One of her patients with bone cancer had been on the unit for a long time. It was really beautiful watching this nurse go from being abrupt and a little harsh to being very sensitive and caring. The nurse got called away, and I finished the patient's care. The patient startled me when she said, "I see what you're doing." I wasn't sure what she meant. Then she added, "I could not believe the change in that nurse. And we, the patients, are grateful." The staff were changing and offering to help each other, regardless of patient load, status, or race. Sometimes our census would drop and we would be floated to other floors. The staff hated when this occurred, as they usually got dumped on or got assigned the toughest patients. One day, the assignment for one of the RNs was extremely hard. The nursing assistants, while on break, heard about the situation. Instead of laughing, they all went back to their units to finish up as quickly as possible. They asked their head nurses if they could go help this nurse, as she was extremely overloaded. The news of this occurrence was immediately noticed by the administration, and they called me down to discuss the situation and how the barriers had been broken. I was asked to assess another unit in the hospital shortly after this situation. It happened to be the oncology unit located on the very top floor of the hospital. It did not take long to feel the friction between the staff and one of the main physicians, and this created an atmosphere of stress for the patients and staff. Since I was new, I decided to introduce myself to this physician, trying to make a connection. I mentioned that I just met one of his patients and commented on how nice he was. His reply almost took my breath away. "That guy's not nice. He's a pig. If you think he's nice, you're stupider than you look." I wasn't thinking, but a response came out of my mouth. I said, "You're right. I don't know Mr. Gomez, but I guess I just love all of my patients." I think he must have felt the statement was made not in a negative or confrontational way, but out of love, and it triggered the feeling in him. He turned to me and said, "I owe you an apology." This was the beginning of a wonderful story of change. I would make rounds with this doctor every day, because no one else wanted to. He always had many complaints, and many were valid. Nurses didn't call reports when they should, out of fear of being yelled at, which he did. Gradually, the communication improved, and one day, as we started to make rounds, I realized that he had gotten into the habit of starting the day off with a joke instead of yelling. On this particular day, he was so funny, we were both laughing as we entered the first patient's room. Remember, this was the doctor who used to yell not only at the staff, but also at his patients. He looked at this man with love in his eyes and said, "I guess you're wondering why we're laughing." He then sat down and with the most gentle voice told the patient the joke and shared with him how much he'd enjoyed taking care of him. This was very powerful for me to watch, as I realized that when one professional loses their balance or gets burnt out, the way to help them is by keeping your own balance. Reacting to their negativity will only bring out more negativity, but reacting with love and compassion will help bring out these feelings in them. This doesn't mean you let people walk on you, but you're able to see their behavior from an impersonal perspective, a reflection of their own thought-created reality. After this, other nurses started making rounds with this physician and were able to function as a team. I have another story that a physician, Dr. Mark, shared about himself as he started to learn about the principles of mind, consciousness, and thought, and how it affects interpersonal relationships at work. He smiled as he told the following story. I was on the phone the other night, and the phone didn't stop ringing. I was tired making rounds the next day as I got very little sleep. My first patient had pneumonia, and I had ordered respiratory therapy treatments for him. I was relieved to see him look so much better. I said to the patient, "I guess the treatments helped you." He smiled. "I didn't get any treatments, and I didn't need any. I rested well." I'm sure I ordered those treatments QID. I was shouting by the time I made it back to the nurse's station. "Where is that charge nurse?" You could hear a pin drop as she walked out of her office. "I'm really tired of your incompetent staff that doesn't carry out my orders." The charge nurse remained calm and positive as I explained my frustration. She pulled the chart and found the order that read QID PRN, or 4 times a day as needed. I walked off in a huff, hit the button for the elevator, but while waiting for the elevator had time to calm down. I had a big insight. How powerful and helpful it felt to have someone stay positive and calm when you were caught off balance. It helped neutralize my anger, which I would have shared with my staff and maybe my patients. The elevator came, but I didn't get on. Instead, I returned to the nurse's station and thanked the charge nurse for keeping her balance when I'd lost mine. She simply replied, "No big deal." I couldn't help but think what a different day it would have been if she had made it a big deal. She probably helped more patients that day by simply keeping in touch with her own mental health, and it had allowed me to do the same. Maybe I can help her out someday. Currently, I'm not working in the hospital, but I love the opportunity to help other healthcare professionals. Recently, I met a young physician that had just started working at the hospital. I asked how things were going. She said a fellow colleague had been giving her a hard time, making negative comments about her in front of the other colleagues. As we talked, she acknowledged that she realized that the person had a lot of personal situations to deal with, as she was going through a divorce, but she felt the actions of this person were very hurtful. I told her the other doctor must have been having a bad day, and she was catching the fallout. I said how wonderful to have a team member that keeps her balance when you lose yours. This was a very caring and compassionate physician. The patients were always her main concern. We talked about how keeping your balance or mental health directly impacts and affects patients and other staff. This lady loved to surf. I didn't see her for several days, and when I did see her, she made a point of saying the following. "I thought about what you said, and it really makes sense. It's like when you're on a surfboard, waiting for that big wave, and it finally comes. If you react to it, you get wiped out. But if you stay calm and go right through it, that's a great feeling."
Well, I really enjoyed that chapter. I would like to say that. It really illustrates how 3P can be shared by a wise contributor such as Drema was, and she actually was changing, whole wards in a hospital, and when she had that success with the nursing assistants and the administration were right on it and calling her in for advice, wanting to know what she had done. That's magic. The stuff that Drema reveals on this tape is really marvelous to me because of the way, she changed, the other nurses that she knew changed. It wasn't people who were seeking out 3P or seeking out advice or help. It was help that was brought and that they jumped on when they saw it. And that's a little bit different than I've been used to looking at it. Normally, my thoughts are, if people are asking you for help, that's your invitation. And Drema's approach was more top down in a sense. She got opportunities given by management, and she seized them, and it was very, very effective. So I see this tape as being something that can help humanity directly, and I've been actually talking to Debbie, who's in the room now and who works with nurses, with the idea of sharing Drema's work with other nurses specifically. I mean, it's called for nurses, and hearing that the nursing profession has the highest suicide rate of any profession right now, and is going through incredible turmoil. It seems to me that there's an urgency to share 3P, particularly through the avenue, the doorway, the megaphone that is presented us by Drema, Odum's legacy tapes.
Okay, all right. What I would like to share is that she was talking about that reacting to negativity brings more negativity. And the only way you can help the other person is by having your mental health stable, by being loving, by being caring, and by being understanding. And that's what I see in my life. Years ago, when I used to react to the people around, it didn't work. But after listening to Sid, actually, I was always kind and positive, but by listening to Sid, I've been more kind, more loving, and more understanding. So now relationships in my life, they just flow. It's wonderful, you know. All right. Does anybody else want to add something about Drema? Marty, would you like to add something about Drema?
Well, I mean, it's an incredible story. And the fact that, one of the things I saw Sid suggest to some people that even it doesn't matter if it was near the last chapter of their life, it was always still worth sharing. Like some people might say, "Well, no, I'm near finished. I shouldn't share," but was not his attitude at all. But I do have a question. I don't have the knowledge for some reason. I guess I missed this. At what time in her life does she write this?
This would have been just before she passed away, Marty. It would have been in early 2000, 2002, perhaps. And that was it. She knew she was passing on, and she wanted to leave this as a legacy, as her gift to mankind, really. She wanted to share 3P as a nurse, and this is the result.
So she wrote this and then she read it.
That's right.
Well, you know, there's only one word for that. That's compassion.
Well, it works for me. Yeah. Unconditional love for all of humanity, for everyone.
That's another word. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tremendous.
It is.
I think that's an example of what was being said earlier, that people it is the message. And so even if you didn't know Sid, you can pick up from the ripples where it's gone out, and the love is being shared. Yeah. The other funny thing that Sid said, one time I was there when someone said, "Oh, I wish I was there in the old times." He said, "Oh, you're lucky you weren't." Like it's not to really, people. It's now is the time we have, and it's the beautiful time, and the message is here.
Yes, and regarding Drema, she was a favorite of Sid's, actually, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, but you folks may not be aware, but when she was about to die, the call went out from her husband to various people that she would not survive the weekend, kind of deal. And Sid and Judy immediately dropped everything and came to Maui to be with her. And on a Friday night, she called us up and said, "Sid and Judy are here, and we want to have you guys over." Well, she was really on her last legs at that time, and heavily medicated, but still of service, still thrilled that they were there. still attempting to be a hostess, although she could hardly stand, and as I say, heavily medicated. And that was Friday night, and she passed away the Monday morning. Sid and Judy left the next day.
All right, so Monica has a question. Hi, Monica.
Well, wonderful stories. I listened to Sid too, so I recognized all these persons. I was quite an introvert at that time, but I remember you all, and I have become more conversant in my older age, which is good. But I relate the story that she told as to talking about relationships. I mean, I worked as a nurse years ago in Montreal. Then I dropped out because of bizarre treatment and got to Salt Spring and listened to Sid. So, and now I converse very easily with people, but I had an experience of working in addiction. And when I went in there, I had to facilitate, and I was terrified. I thought, geez, I'm an introvert. I don't talk. And so what I went in with is see the help, because the whole process there was to look at problems.
Mm-hmm.
So, but whatever we're talking about, whether it's a relationship, separate realities, everyone that spoke,
yeah,
we're kind of all doing that as Drema is doing I think it's lovely, to go in with that attitude, and it did explode.
Yes.
Which was lovely. It was caught on.
Mm-hmm. And as she said, if you can change one nurse, the ripple effect goes on and on to the co-workers, to the patients' families. Everybody that a nurse touches during their daily work.
Well, there are two nurses who do. Teresa is one. Who do a nurse's talk. And I did a talk with them once too. My avenue went more to art and creativity as a way of quietening the mind, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So that I teach drawing on the artist within now. I connect with the rewilding, Rohini and Angus.
Oh, yes.
And they're doing a group right now. And it's sort of, well, I got a little grant from a little community center where I go out to. So I'm doing, but drawing in the artist within, for me I thought it was a way to help people stay out of the intellectual because they had something, whether it's going for a walk or enjoying something they do.
Sure.
So I'm a little scared, but I've got a lot of people from the rewilding, and I have a site called Drawing on the Artist Within, and I'm offering it a Zoom, which is a little tricky, but I have one person at the community center who kind of helped me with those technical stuff. So it's a big jump, but it's my way of sharing the principle.
Beautiful.
The best of my ability.
Well,
Thank you, Monica. I would like to play a Sid strip, and that'll be the end of the show. First of all, I would like to thank Sydney Banks Legacy Foundation for supporting us in using these tapes of Sid. And here we go. Sydney Banks on Thought and Marriage.
Some people have asked me to talk about a quiet mind, a silent mind. What do I really mean? Because I get quite concerned when I say a silent mind. Now, don't get me mixed up by thinking that what I mean by a silent mind is a mind that has no thoughts, because that is an impossibility. There's no human being on earth who has consciousness that doesn't have a thought. A thought is an ongoing thing. It's perpetual, providing us consciousness. So you don't have to worry about that. All I'm talking about is a quiet mind or a silent mind is a mind that's not contaminated by negative thoughts from the past or the present. Now, let me try and explain to you what good this does, and how simple it really works. And it works on us every day, but we don't know it. But once you spot it and you see it, then it starts to make sense, then maybe some understanding will come to you. And when I talk about a quiet mind, let's put it this way: if you have a job to do, you're at work, and you are really upset, and your mind's going about all your little problems or your so-called problems or your past thoughts of somebody else, it's all negative, then you can rest assured that day at the work is going to be awful. It's going to be boring. Everything's going to go wrong because that's the kind of world you're seeing. Now, on the other hand, if you walk into your work and you have a clear mind and you have a job to do and you really get into that job, then you enjoy it. You ever wonder that some days, you maybe walk into the work and a challenge comes and you think, wow, I'll get into this challenge. Eh? You got maybe a deadline for a particular job and you get into it. Well, when you're really into it, you're enjoying it because you're fulfilling something in yourself. But the point is, while you're doing that, you don't have all those negative thoughts behind you. You forgot all about it. And that's what forgiveness is forgetting. Now, on the other hand, let's leave the work and come back with the same positive feeling in your head, eh? Well, this is how it's going to react to the home life, to your spouse, to your children. Because, I see a lot of people and they get quite upset with their kids and they're not really upset with their kids at all. They're upset with their own mind, their own thoughts, their own negative thoughts, and they start seeing the negative world, so they take it out on the children. But if you have a relaxed mind, a mind that's not contaminated with all those thoughts that you say your parents put in you or someday a society put in you, stop making excuses. All they are thoughts from the past, which are ghosts that haunt you. That's all they are. It's past negative thoughts are like ghosts that haunt you. There's no common sense can come out of it. No matter how hard or how desperate your negative thoughts are from the past. These are the thoughts that get you into trouble now. These are the thoughts that create the alcoholic. These are the thoughts that make people go deep and heavy into drugs. These are the thoughts that turn child against parent, parent against child, spouse against spouse. It's all negative thought. It's only thought. Now, please remember this. That's all it is thought. Now, if you want to go deeper, we can go deeper. We can say, what is life? If you want my philosophy, life is a divine dream suspended in time. Now, once you start to realize what this really means, you start to realize that time also is an illusion. It is a man-created thing. It is created via our own thoughts. Life, as we see it, is governed by our own thoughts. It is all thought. If I dislike my parents from the past, it is only thought. It is not a reality. It was a reality when I was a child and my parents, I didn't like them or whatever they did or whatever. Eh? But that was then. Now, if I've got to carry scars all the way through my life, then I'm carrying a sickness which no longer really is alive. It's only a ghost. It's a thought. The worst thing in the world that married people can do is to hold negative thoughts against each other. And we do that. We say it's natural. Well, perhaps it is natural. Let's go beyond the natural to a superior state where we can disregard those ghosts from the past that control us now, that control us in our marriage. And believe me, as far as I'm concerned, the most important thing in the world is a good marriage. Because if it's a good marriage, then the children will benefit from that good marriage. And what creates a bad marriage always is negative thoughts. We all hold negative thoughts against each other, and we know where to put them and whose button to push, so that I know I could get my wife angry any time if I said certain things, and she could get me angry saying certain things and gripping my insecurity. Eh? You know what insecurity is? That too is only thought. If I say to you, I am insecure, then I have created an insecure person, myself. And all I have to do is change my thought, just a thought, nothing else. Change thoughts, you'll change your marriage. You'll change it from good to bad, from bad to good. You can change it any way you want, because it'll be governed by your thoughts, only your thoughts. You must learn to forgive. And to forgive is to forget. And to say to your spouse, tell me what happened 15 years ago. Please tell me. I'll forgive you, but just tell me. Then you're not in a forgiving mood, because if you really are in a forgiving mood, it doesn't care. It really doesn't matter. You should take your spouse, whatever they are right now, whatever they are. And this is where, if you start to do that, then you start to trust in each other. And it's not, I'm not talking about the hippie days of the love where it was all, it was turned into a sexual thing. Eh? True love and sex have got nothing to do with each other. There's no argument there. But that's what happened in the hippie days. And they thought, oh, we'll love everybody and the flower children, etc. And they didn't really know what they were doing. They were innocent. They left their works. They didn't help society. They went against society. Well, if you go against society, you must have a negative thought. And those people were, although they said they were working via love, they were actually full of hate, because they were full of negative thoughts towards society and life in general. Never do that. Look for the positivity. And there's only one way you can find that, and I swear it's true, is look within yourself, because deep within yourself lies the secret to all psychological knowledge. Deep within you lies the secret of life. Deep within you lies the secret of all things, because somewhere you are connected to the consciousness of the universe, because it's all the same consciousness. You see, without consciousness, there wouldn't even be life. There just wouldn't be. But because life is divine consciousness, and we are created from this divine consciousness, then we have a connection. We have a direct link. And this is what, from the beginning of time, people have been searching for, something very spiritual, very special, and we go in many ways, and they call this religion. Eh? But look within yourself. And all those main religions will tell you the same thing. Look within yourself for the answer. And the answer, when it comes, will come via what some people may call an insight. Some people may call a revelation. Some may call an extreme deep understanding. There are many, many names you can call this. Eh? But all you're looking for is understanding. And you cannot see or feel understanding until you get a positive thought, because it is all comes via a feeling, a positive feeling. That is how the world is uncovered to humanity, is via a feeling. Now, if you were in Hawaii, you would call it the aloha feeling. Now, here we just call it a positive feeling. We don't have any other word for it I know of, except a feeling of love. And a feeling of love and a feeling of understanding both go together. You can't have one without the other. That's why you see some old lady or some old man or young person is really full of love. They're always full of understanding. They're not ready to condemn. They're full of understanding because they have simply lifted a veil in their own consciousness, which has eliminated the negative feelings, and in its place comes this feeling of love and understanding. That's very important in a marriage. It's just a feeling of love and understanding, and not trying to outdo each other, because then there's a fight, see? There's a competition in a marriage. There should be no competition in marriage. What I see my wife accomplish now makes me really proud of her. Whereas in the past, I would have been afraid. But that was my weakness, because I had insecure thoughts. Only thoughts. But the second those thoughts go away, you see the beauty of your spouse. You see how clever your spouse is. It gives you a feeling of pride. Feeling of pride is something really valuable. It's a beautiful feeling because there's no insecurity there. And that's what you give to your spouse. You know, I hope this has brought a little bit of understanding to what I mean by a quiet mind. And if not, well, I remember I put a little piece of tape called The Quiet Mind, and I explained it in detail. Maybe, perhaps you just missed it, what I was trying to say, but that's the difficulty with trying to give away truth, or whatever you want to call it. It can't be given away verbally. It is you that must realize it. It must come from you. You are the sole owner of all wisdom. Thank you very much, and I hope it helps you.
All right, it's been a wonderful time. It has been a party, Jim.
I agree, Karen. It's been quite a ride, hasn't it?
In the history of the Three Principles community, it's been the longest ever.
I want to say thanks to everyone. Those of you that are still in the room, boy, you're diehards. But really, thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for making it happen. And Chirs and Larry, I see you're still with us. Marty and Cheryl are, and Robin is, he's got a thumbs up there. You guys were great. I'm so proud of you all. You shared so openly, so so lovingly, and I know you were stepping up to do it. So my gratitude goes out to you. My thanks. Well done, everybody. Peace. Thank you. Nick, thank you. Debbie, everybody. Frederick. We've got BJ. Misi, is it? Katrine, Divesh, all of you. Thanks so much for being here. It's really been wonderful. Anyway, applause to you all, Monica, everyone.
I want to thank Robin and Jerry, Chirs and Larry, Marty and Cheryl, and lastly, Jim and Ros. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank
you.
guys.
So we'll be talking to you in episode 5, Sharing with Seniors, and it's going to be amazing. And I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you very much, and we'll talking to you soon in episode 5. Aloha.
Episode 5 will be similar in that there will be other guest sharers too. So, yeah. And aloha, everybody, as Corinne said.